Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Emerald Necklace by Linda Rosen, narrated by Traci Odom. He who envies others does not obtain peace of mind. Buddha. Chapter 1. Her artistry was gone. It had come to a screeching halt 3 months ago, the day Arnold died. She hadn't touched a plant or, worse, a piece of clay since. She had walked the beach each morning, swam when the tide was low, scanned magazines, unable to concentrate on a novel, and had the occasional afternoon tea with a friend. That was all. Now, on this January morning, with the Florida sun on her shoulders and her knees on the grass, her trowel burrowing deep into the dry, sandy soil, she tried to get it all back. She shoved the trowel deeper, wiggling it around, nudging it under the roots. The metal hit a rock. It wouldn't budge. With a tight grip on the wooden handle, she shifted the tool left, maneuvering it under pebbles and sand. The pointed tip got caught in the roots, making her dig further down under the fine hairs. A little deeper, and she got purchase. Finally, she scooped up the tropical plant, dropped it and the trowel on the ground, and sat back to gaze at the clear, blue, early morning sky, watching a blue jay in flight. Though the hard, dusty soil was nothing like the moist, malleable clay she so loved, she wanted to keep the garden as lovely as Arnold had. Holding the bromeliad in her hands, she carefully pulled the new shoots off. It was as if the plant was giving birth. She laid the baby plants on the ground and dug holes in the soil, making new homes where they could grow, where they could mature and expand. Despite the hole in her heart, the ache she was sure would never go away, Rosalee knew she had been one lucky lady. She'd had 15 years with Arnold, short but marvelous. Now he was gone, and at 63, she wondered how she would live without him. Without his arms enfolding her each morning, she purring like a kitten, the sheets tangled, the scent of sleep on his skin. Without his hand caressing her thigh each evening as they cuddled on the couch watching television. Without his encouragement when she was frustrated with the clay. Without him. But this morning there was a lightness in her chest, one she hadn't felt in a long time, merely from getting out of the house and accomplishing something. No more of this doing nothing, she said aloud, reiterating the decision she had made earlier when the delicious aroma of Maxwell House perfumed her kitchen. It's time to get back to life. Actually, she needed to create a new one. And what better time than the start of a new year? Was she ready for that? Yes, she announced to the sky. After transplanting these babies, I'm heading to my studio. Merely making that statement brought her spine up straight and a gentle smile to her face. Her studio. The one Arnold had built for her when she moved into his turquoise Florida cottage with a gold band adorning her 4th finger. You need a place of your own to sculpt, he'd said, where your creativity will soar. She had put off her sculpting for too long. Now she was ready to work again, or hoped she was, to create a piece Arnold would have been proud of. No, she told herself, one she would be proud of. Proud enough to dig up the courage she desperately needed, the courage to put her work out in the world for others to see, to judge. The hum of tires on the road made her turn. She watched the UPS truck pull up to the curb and a big, burly man get out. "Oh, that's heavy," she called as the driver extricated her package from the back of the truck. "Let me get you a cart." "No need, ma'am. Where do you want it?" Rosalee pointed to the driveway. She would wheel it to the studio herself as soon as she finished transplanting. And that couldn't come soon enough. "Okay, then," the man said. "Have a lovely day. I imagine you'll be watching the inauguration later." Sure. Yes." She waved him a goodbye, thinking, no way. This girl would rather be pressing her fingers into the new clay than watching Richard Nixon sworn in as the 37th President of the United States. With her knees back on the grass, Rosalee placed the baby plants in the dirt and tucked them into the ground like a mother tucks her babies into bed. Splashes of bright green and hot pink leaves dotted the garden. She stood and bent backward, stretching out her spine. "One more thing, then it's on to my studio," she told herself, and walked over to the hose attached to the side of the house. She turned the water on and dragged it around to the front to give the babies their much-needed nourishment, just as she would nourish herself with clay. Or so she hoped. "Hello," came a voice from the sidewalk. A very proper voice. "Your garden is lovely. Are you planting something new today?" Rosalee turned to find a woman dressed in a straight skirt, pleated in front, and a dropped-waist blouse. More like 1929 than 69. It even had the bow draped around the V-neck collar. In one hand she held a lit cigarette, in the other a leash attached to a caramel-colored dog with fluffy ears. Thankfully, she was gloveless, or Rosalee would have had to check the calendar. "I've been admiring the way the flowers sort of meander in the border," the middle-aged woman said. "I like the way you use texture, wispy and sword-like, all mixed with those lovely violet flowers. I wanted to ring your bell and ask if you'd help me design mine, but I'm far from a landscape artist," Rosalee laughed, continuing to water the plants, while looking over her shoulder at the woman on the sidewalk. "My husband designed this, and I'm just trying to keep up with it, do some transplanting, clean up all these tangled runners." And then, she said to herself, "Get my hands back on my moist clay instead of this gritty stuff." She turned the nozzle off, stopping the flow of water, and dragged the hose back to the side of the house. "Your dog is adorable," she said as she rolled a rubber hose on its wheel. "He looks like a dachshund, but with fluffy ears." The woman bent and patted the puppy's head. "Taffy is my little love," she said. "We rescued him from a shelter when we moved in." She took a drag on her cigarette, then dropped it on the sidewalk and stomped it out with her foot. "Oh, you're the new neighbor at the end of the cul-de-sac." Rosalee brushed the soil from her hands, the brown dirt not nearly as satisfying as the muddy white film left by clay. "Sorry I haven't come by to welcome you. I've been a bit distracted lately." That's for sure, she thought. Distracted is a good word. Though I don't need to pour my heart out to this woman who doesn't seem to know what year we're in. And why am I even talking to her? I want to go to my studio. The woman chatted on about plants and dogs. Rosalee adjusted her Madras blouse, making sure the buttons closed over her ample breasts. I should invite her in for a cup of coffee, she thought. Some neighbors did that for me when I was new. But now? "My name is Fran, by the way," the lady said. Rosalee gave an embarrassed giggle. "I'm Rosalee Linoff. Glad to meet you. If I can offer any help on what to plant, I'll do my best. But now I've got—" "Maybe you and your husband would come for dinner," the woman said, cutting her off. "And he can tell me all about Florida flora, what works in this soil so close to the beach." Rosalee stiffened. Once again, she would have to say the words aloud. It wasn't getting any easier, no matter what people said. Each time the reality hit hard, and she did not want that reality. She braced herself and said, "My husband is deceased." Her voice barely pierced the quiet morning air. "I'm so sorry." Fran waved her hand as if she could erase her faux pas. I just assumed since— That's okay. Here I go again, making the other person feel better. Damn. "Why don't you come in?" she said, surprising herself. "We'll have a cup of coffee and I'll show you Arnold's gardening books. You can borrow them." Fran was concerned about Taffy, though Rosalee assured her she loved dogs and would actually enjoy having this cutie in her house. Did I really say that? What the hell's wrong with me? I was going to work in my studio. She shook off that idea, realizing she could do it later, just as she could do the weeding tomorrow. There was nowhere she had to be, and no one waiting for her latest sculpture. or for her. Plus, it'll be nice having someone to talk to have a little noise in the house. The silence was deafening. Rosalee left the trowel on the edge of the flower bed, waiting for tomorrow or the next time she felt the urge to garden. With Fran and Taffy following, she stepped up onto her front porch. Suddenly, it hit her. Fran never knew Arnold. It would change their conversation. She couldn't share memories with Fran like she did with Selma and her other friends. Fran couldn't make her smile. Or laugh, which stabbed her heart each time a bit of a chuckle escaped her lips. How can I possibly giggle when my life has fallen apart? She shook off the thought and told herself it was time to talk about other things anyway. Maybe I'll invite her to have tea with Selma and me on Thursday. She glanced at Fran's two-piece frock. It reminded her of the dresses she wore to those society luncheons so many years ago, and she wondered if this vintage woman would fit in. "Your home is lovely," Fran said, glancing through the archway leading to the living room, the dog in her arms. Her white canvas shoes with the patent trim brushed the edge of the shag carpet. Rosalee, proud of her home, stopped and let Fran take in the new floating rosewood wall unit filled with books and knickknacks and the vibrant orange pillows tossed on the sectional sofa facing it. She and Arnold had spent many enjoyable hours hosting friends in their living room. Would she do it anymore? Fran took her time, following Rosalee to the kitchen, stopping to view the black-and-white photographs on the wall, as if she were in a museum. Framed shots of the Eiffel Tower, Arc de Triomphe, London Bridge, and others filled the hallway. "Gorgeous," she said. "Who's the photographer?" "My husband. It was his photography that actually brought us together. We traveled a lot, something I hadn't done until I met him." A shiver ran through her. "Come," she said, stopping herself from going down that melancholy road again. "Coffee or tea? And it's okay, you can put the dog down." The walls were papered a cheery yellow and white gingham that blended with the harvest gold appliances. Taffy found a spot in front of the French doors that led to the backyard. The sun streamed in, warming the little guy, while Fran sat on one of the chrome chairs covered in red vinyl. "Your husband was a swell photographer," Fran said, elbows on the Formica table, resting her chin on her clasped hands. "Is that what he did for a living?" "Oh, no. Photography was his avocation. He was a dentist." Fran shook her head up and down just a tiny bit. Rosalee's scalp prickled with unease. What was this woman thinking? Was she counting their money? Comparing their life with hers? Fran had a husband. What more did she want? "Are you originally from around here?" Fran asked. "I'm from Brooklyn, New York." Rosalee giggled and told Fran she knew where Brooklyn was, that she was from the city, too. Greenwich Village. "I moved down here when I married Arnold. He came to Florida after the war for dental school. In fact, he grew up in Brooklyn." "Really? Where?" "Brighton Beach." "So did I. Though I doubt I'd know him. Brooklyn is a big borough, and besides, he was probably older than me." Rosalee's fingertips found the ends of her chin-length hair. She hadn't been to the beauty parlor since Arnold's death, and now, with the red fading, becoming almost white, Fran obviously thought she was old. Rosalee did not like that. She'd been coloring her hair the past 4 years, since her granddaughter's bat mitzvah, so the 3 generations of Linoff women would look alike in the pictures. Or maybe, if she was honest, it was to look younger than her years. Whatever. She was not about to let this woman, who she hardly knew, know it bothered her. Making no mention of hair color and telling herself she would make an appointment at the beauty parlor, Rosalee filled a percolator and plugged it in. "I don't have any goodies to offer you other than some store-bought cookies," she said. "I'm not a baker." Fran waved her hand, letting Rosalee know it didn't matter. No kidding, Rosalee thought. You don't get that slender filling your face with sugar. Was her new neighbor as fragile as her long, thin neck? Coffee ready, a few Oreos on a plate, Rosalee joined Fran at the table. "This is lovely," Rosalee said, meaning every word. "Tell me, what brought you to our Sunshine State?" Fran told Rosalee about her husband's retirement and how he wanted to be able to play golf all year long. As for me, it's the perfect place for my writing. Oh, what do you write? Fran's brow lifted. Mysteries, she said, as if the word held a mystery of its own. Then she laughed, waving her hand in the air. Nothing gory. Don't worry. Just cozy stories, though always with a murder. They're set in a little town along the water where palm trees flutter in the breeze. Oh my gosh. Are you Fran Barish? Fran nodded. Have you read my books? Absolutely. Truthfully, she had devoured them. Or used to. Was that why Fran was so fascinated with her decor, her garden? Would Rosalee be a character in the next novel? My gosh, she said, shoving her curiosity aside. You have to meet Selma. She loves your books. Rosalee couldn't help herself. Envy crept up her chest again. Arnold had always said her sculptures were magnificent and that she needed to keep submitting. Don't let rejection stop you. It's all subjective, sweetheart, he'd said after she submitted to several juried art shows only to be shot down each time. Secretly, she went to those shows in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, telling Arnold she was meeting a friend or going shopping for the day. She almost ground her teeth down to the gums walking through those aisles, viewing the sculptures that had been accepted. One piece barely showed the veins in the sculpted foot, and the toenails were totally unrealistic. Another's ear was completely out of proportion to the head. And then there was the pottery. One berry bowl and sugar bowl after the next. Nothing as creative as the ceramic wall hangings she'd made when living in New York, or the intricately designed platters she used when serving dinner to company. The ones her friends admired and said they wished they had an ounce of her talent. Yet each time she went home from those juried shows, that burning sensation crept up her chest, the one that always fired when she compared her work to others. After several more unsuccessful attempts submitting, she gave up. What's the sense? She'd said to Arnold when he kept encouraging her. You're my husband. You have to say my work is good. Obviously you're wrong. I don't have the talent. Occasionally Rosalee went into her studio and played with the clay. Sometimes she even created something for herself or for her family. But how she still wanted her chance. Was it for success? Or fame? Was there a difference? She wasn't sure. Fran certainly had it with words. Why couldn't she with clay? But to do that, she'd have to submit her work again, present it to the world. Her stomach quivered at the thought. Chapter 2. Fran had left a half hour ago. Now, with the dishes stacked in the dishwasher and the kitchen all cleaned up, it was finally time for Rosalee to move on. She was as excited as a kid getting a brand new box of Crayola crayons. She wheeled the 50-pound box of clay across the yard into her studio. As heavy as it was, she managed to drag the package off the cart without pulling a muscle. Then she slid her index finger under the tape and the flaps opened. 2 huge blocks of moist clay wrapped in plastic waited for her. She inhaled the earthy scent. Her heart kicked up a beat. Her fingers twitched, aching to press into the cool, creamy peanut butter feel of the clay. She hadn't realized how much she missed it. Rosalee extricated one of the packages, hefted it up onto her workspace, and unwrapped it. Then, with her fingers wrapped around a double-handled wire, standing with her feet solidly on the ground, she pushed the wire down into the brand-new clay, wiggling it, cutting a line. Using all her strength, she sliced through, clear to the bottom. With her adrenaline pumping, Rosalee moved the large chunk of clay onto a wooden board, then grabbed a water bottle and sprayed the remaining piece. She tucked that extra clay into a large vinyl bin, as she'd always done, for future use. With the lid in her hands, she stopped, looked at it, then pressed it down, closing the bin. Yes, she told herself, there would be a future use. There has to be. After pushing the bin to a corner of the room, Rosalee returned to the table to work. Sunlight streamed through the angled skylights on the A-frame roof, highlighting the black-and-white photograph on the wall. It was her granddaughter, Jill, lying on her tummy on a crocheted blanket, in a diaper, a little bow perched on her red curls. When Arnold had built it, he told Rosalee 2 things were needed in an artist studio: natural light and talent. Rosalee had the first. She was determined to restore the second. She reached up and gently placed 2 fingers on the edge of the glass. A caress. This photo would be her muse. A slight smile crept across her cheeks as she thought about the day Arnold took that picture. It was in 1952, on his first visit to New York, only 1 month since they'd met at the art show in Miami. They had spoken on the phone many times. When Rosalee commented that he was racking up a huge bill, Arnold said it didn't matter. He wanted to get to know her better. And then one evening, he announced he'd like to come to New York, take her to dinner, take her anywhere. He simply needed to see her again. She was as giddy as a preteen being asked to her first dance. Arnold showed up at her door in Greenwich Village the following week. He was dressed in black slacks, sport coat and tie, holding a dozen red roses. Rosalee tinkled now with the image of him standing there with a grin the size of Texas. It had been a glorious day, especially when he came up behind her while she was rinsing their coffee cups. He wrapped his arms around her body and gently placed a kiss on her neck. Like warm chocolate, she melted. Later, after many more kisses and a lovely lunch at a nearby cafe, they took the subway uptown. Strolling hand in hand through Central Park, they watched kids on bicycles, young men throwing a Spalding around, and couples boating on the lake. Arnold told her he'd rented a car. They could drive to New Jersey to meet her daughter and son-in-law and 3-month-old Jill. Rosalee remembered the warmth that radiated through her body, how her heart kicked up a beat. Then, when he met Jill, it was love at first sight between Arnold and the baby. And Rosalee knew this was the man she wanted to grow old with. She swiped her finger along her wet eyelashes. Melancholy was all right for a moment, but this afternoon in her studio was supposed to be uplifting. She was ready to get back to work and knew exactly what she wanted to sculpt. It would be the first in a series, and if she got her guts up, and that was a big if, one day she would submit again, and maybe, if she was lucky, they'd be accepted and presented in an art show. With a heavy wooden block, one of her treasured tools, Rosalee pounded the clay. The musty, earthy scent filled her nose. She was glad to be back in her happy space. She worked hard moving the clay, first to the right, then left, then angled and right again to get the proper dimensions needed to mold it into her desired shape. The first time she'd sculpted hands clasped together, one was tiny, the other unwrinkled. She had started it as soon as she'd returned to Florida after meeting Arnold at the art show. Her son-in-law had taken a Polaroid picture of Rosalee holding baby Jill's hand. She used it to create the treasured piece. It still held a prominent place on her daughter's teak wall unit. Now Rosalee was going to sculpt a new piece, using her wrinkled appendage as the model and smoothing it out to make Jill's. She bent over the table and let her fingers sink into the supple clay. Despite the months away, they remembered how to move, how to press, how to mold. After some time, her spine let her know she needed to sit. She pulled the chair close and let her fingers dictate the shapes using what she'd learned about anatomy in school. The clay felt smooth and cool. She gently pressed and pinched, creating the back of the hand. She giggled, remembering when she learned the term for it, a pisthionar. She'd impressed her mother with that knowledge. Rosalee sat back as her mother's gracefully lined face came to her. From the time she was little, she admired her mother, first with the love of a little girl for her mommy, and later in awe of her as a woman. Her mother had always told Rosalee to pursue her dream, not to let a man hold her back. Ha! If only I'd paid attention, Rosalee thought, focusing on the clay. She used her nails and a thin knife to form the bumps and wrinkles of her arthritic hand. Over the past 63 years, her hand had experienced a great deal. She needed to express that in the clay, and wondered if she should add a wedding band to the fourth finger. That thought brought her to Jill, whose hand she'd soon be sculpting. She wished she could have her granddaughter's actual hand rather than using her own as a model. But Jill wasn't coming down during her winter break this year. Ice and snow didn't seem to bother her, not with a boyfriend to spend long, uninterrupted days with doing whatever 17-year-olds did. A slight shiver slid down her spine. She was only 1 year older than Jill when her life took an unintended turn. She would never say wrong turn, since it gave her Gary and Deborah and, of course, Jill. Yet she did not want that roadway for her granddaughter. "Things don't change much, do they?" she mumbled, staring into space. "They're just done earlier now." Rosalee worried her wedding band, then pressed her thumbs back on the moist clay, smoothing out the rough edges, trying to make them perfect, as if she could do the same for her family. Chapter 3. The following afternoon, Rosalee, along with her friend Selma and several other pedestrians, stood on the sidewalk watching the boats on the Intracoastal Waterway. On the quarter hour every day, the Banyan Avenue Bridge rose. Yachts and sailboats passed through, continuing on their way north or south. "Where do you think they're all going?" Rosalee said, wiggling her bare toes. After 15 years of living in Florida, she was still thrilled to be wearing sandals in January. Rosalee knew she was staying in the Sunshine State, even though her daughter had recently asked if she had plans to sell the house and move back up north. "After all, you only moved there because of Arnold," Deborah had said. Rosalee had no intention of doing that, though now alone, she did wonder where her life was going. This was the 4th time she'd had to reinvent herself. First, she swapped childhood for motherhood, then her divorce, then marriage to Arnold, and now widowhood. And there was Selma standing next to her. She'd only done one reinvention. Fran, too, it seemed. Lucky them. "I have no idea," Selma said, watching a shiny white luxury yacht sail by. "They're probably just having a lovely time on the water." It was a gorgeous day. Fluffy clouds dotted the South Florida blue sky. Pots of pink and lavender bougainvillea draped over the bridge's railing, adding to the pleasure of 2 old friends strolling together. When they were 5 years old, Selma moved into the apartment next door to Rosalee's in the Bronx, and a few years later, both their families moved to Greenwich Village, closer to the bookshop their mothers owned. They'd been best friends ever since. "So, tell me more about your famous neighbor," Selma said. "I can't believe Fran Barish lives down the street from you." "She's a bit odd, like I said, but I think you'll like her." "I do." "Let's have tea together Thursday afternoon. I'll call and ask if she can make it. Better yet, I'll get a few of the neighbors together to meet her." Did I actually just say that? What the hell, she thought. Why not? It's time I jumped back into life. The bridge slowly lowered. Car engines hummed and vroomed. Aretha Franklin's powerful voice blasted from a Chevy as it crossed the Intracoastal heading to AIA, the narrow road that hugged the coastline. Selma held her ears from the blaring noise, and she and Rosalee strolled across. "I'm not crazy about her voice," Selma said after the car passed, "but I do love the song." She sang the first line of the chorus, shouting out each letter of the title, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Yes, as Aretha says, it's the right song at the right time. Yep, Rosalee said. They crossed the street to the beach side of the road. Did you read that Aretha said she would never perform for a segregated audience? Even if you don't like her, you have to admit she's a true activist, not just an entertainer. The women walked along the sidewalk, parallel to the beach. Bounteous sea grapes, with their deep green leaves and red undersides, separated the cement walk from the dunes. Rosalee's eyes gravitated to the turquoise water beyond. She stopped.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?